Hello and welcome to this How Do I video. Today I will show you how easy it is to connect to an external database from CL in Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2016. At the end of this video, you will be able to connect to an external database with the new CL statements, and you will use them like any other table in NAV. In this video, I will guide you through the following steps. First, I will explain the new way of connecting to an external database. Then I will use it to connect to an external timeslot database and fill up my timesheets with the registrations. And finally, I will compare the new way with the old way of coding. Now let's jump to the first step. In this first step, I will explain the new way of connecting to an external database. With NAV 2016, we can now dynamically connect to an external database from CL. To establish this, Microsoft has added the following CL functions, as you can see. With the register table connection statement, you actually set a connection to a SQL database with the correct SQL table. Then you have the set default table connection, which will establish the connection to the SQL table itself. The others will get clear later in this video. Next to these new CL statements, there is also a new data type called table connection type. And as you can see, this feature can be used to connect to an external SQL database, but also to Microsoft CRM. But this will not be covered in this video. And finally, we have a new table type property on tables, where we need to specify the way NAV connects to the table. As we now know which statements and properties we need to use, we can get my timeslot registrations into my NAV timesheets. Before I start, I will show you my objectives and my preparation. First, I have this external SQL database called timeslots. And in this database, there is a table called registration. And in this table, all my time slot registrations are stored. This is a log, typically from a tick clock, which is commonly used in a factory, for example. Before and after every shift, people will use it to register their working time. And this system will calculate their total work time per day. Then in NAV, I have created a similar table, which will be linked with SQL later in this video. My objectives are to see the SQL data in NAV, use them to fill up my timesheets, and update the status from NAV back to SQL. All the tables are already created, but in NAV I did some additional preparation. To make my sample realistic, I've prepared an empty timesheet for my resource. This timesheet will be filled with data from the timeslot database later in this video. So let's dive into the code and make it all work. The first thing we need to do is configure the NAV table. It needs to connect to the SQL table registration. So you need to set the table type to external SQL. Then you fill up the external name with the registration and the right external schema. I have prepared a table with the same number of fields, but as you can see, some of them have different names in SQL. For every difference, we need to fill up the external name. So for example, the job task number in NAV will have the external name of task number in SQL, and the resource number will be connected to the action started by field in SQL. That are all changes to the table, and now we need to connect the SQL database to get all the data. I have opened the Connect to SQL method code unit. First, I will fill up some variables to make it myself easy later in this code. The database name will be timeslots, and we will set the table connection to the connection type external SQL. Then we will register a table connection as follows. So first we need to set the correct connection type, give it a name, and last but not least, provide the right SQL connection string. Next, we need to establish the connection by providing the following code. To make this code work smoothly, we need to check if there is already a table connection. And if there is one, we will unregister the connection like this. Okay, we are now ready to test our code. On top of my table, I have created a page. When we open the page for the first time, we will get the error saying that the table type external SQL must be registered first. Now I have opened my page, and to make it all work, we need to run the code unit in the onInit trigger of the page, so it will register the table connection every time we open the page. It is very important because NAV makes the table connection available as long as your session remains. So when you close your session, the external connections will also be dropped. Let's test it again. Okay, the page now opens and it contains the records of the external SQL database without giving an error. And if we set it next to the SQL Management Studio, you will see that we have the same records in NAV. The next step will be using the data and updating the status back to SQL. In the fill timesheet method code unit, I have prepared some code, and as you can see, we can use the external SQL tables just like a normal NAV table. So we will loop through the unprocessed registrations and insert them in the correct timesheets. And because it behaves like a normal table, we can update fields. So after we inserted the registration in the timesheet line, we will update the status to unprocessed. Now we can test the final part. So let's import the timesheets like this. And when we open the table in the SQL Management Studio, you will see that the status is also updated. The value in SQL is actually an integer value of the NAV option. So 2 means status processed. When we open the timesheets that I have prepared in the beginning, you will see that now it is filled up with tasks and number of work hours. Okay, now that we have seen it all in action, we can compare it with the old way. In the new way, we need to set the table type to external SQL on the NAV table first. Then we need to register the SQL connection and make the connection. And last but not least, run this code every time we open the page. But in the old way, we have another approach. First, we need to make a view within the SQL Management Studio. This view not only needs to have the same name as the NAV table, the fields must also be identical. In this view, you will connect to the other SQL database, as you can see. Then we need to modify the NAV table so that it will look for the SQL view by enabling the linked object property. For the rest, you don't need to make any other modifications. The big advantage of the new way is that we can do everything within NAV itself, and it is easier to maintain. We are come to the part where I will summarize my steps. First, I have explained the way of connecting to an external SQL database. In step 2, I have showed you how easy it is to import registrations from SQL into NAV, and finally, I compared the same functionality with the old way of coding, where we used SQL views and linked tables. In this video, the following topics were covered. I gave you the knowledge of connecting to an external SQL database. Then I made use of it to import all my time slot registrations into my timesheets in NAV. And last, I showed you how simple it is to make a connection to an external SQL database comparing to the old way. Here are some resources where you can find additional information. The last one is specially made to give you some more information about connecting to external SQL databases, and you can find it on MSDN. Thank you for watching this video on how I easily connect to external databases in Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2016. This video was created in collaboration with Microsoft and the Training Center Plataan. See you next time in another How Do I video.